Hello and welcome to this episode of Tripology. I'm Alun and I'm here with the ever-enlightened Adam.
Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday, tripologists. Alan, do you know what day it is today, the day of recording?
The day of recording is exactly 1 year since we started Tripology, is that right?
That is exactly right. The first episode that we released is today, a year ago.
Oh, mate, I'm so relieved because for a second I thought that we'd let our 1 year anniversary go past without so much as a second thought or a celebration. That's really lovely. Oh, thanks for drawing it to our attention.
Well, I've been waiting for this day for 364 days.
Yeah, you've really just started the podcast with the intention of crossing the 1 year finish line and then proceeding onwards into infinity.
Yeah, exactly right. But how incredible is that? It's been a year, mate. We've managed to do it. An episode every single week, regardless of where we are in the world, what we're going through, our other commitments. It is quite astounding.
It's amazing, mate. Congratulations to you. I remember saying to you really early on, Adam, most podcasts don't make it past episode 10. If we can just get past episode 10, the world is our oyster. And look at us now. We're a year in.
I know. We are a year in, but we're also not together. As we heard in the last episode, you left Canada, which we were all incredibly sad about. But now tell us where you are.
Well, I recorded the last episode in Chitwan. I was doing all sorts of safari things. Now I'm in a nearby town called Lumbini, which is very, very significant to one of the world's best and biggest religions. It's Buddhism. But interestingly, temporally, there's something interesting going on. It's actually been quite a lot of time has passed since the last time I spoke to you. Mm-hmm. Because although we like to do these episodes live, sometimes travelling necessitates us creating a backlog, going off on adventures. So most people, they travel to Chitwan, then they travel to Lumbini, or vice versa. They're part of the same circuit. And since I'm here in Lumbini now, why not lump them both together in a beautiful mashed potato of tripology? And I'll talk about them both because Chitwan, geographically, it's close to me. It's kind of close in my memory. Let's talk a little bit first about Chitwan and my experience there. And then after the med break, let's put our spiritual hats on and talk a little bit about Lumbini because, my goodness, what an enlightening experience I've had here.
Wow, yeah, that sounds great. So people typically do both, do they, if they're in Nepal?
If they're going to do one, they'll often do the other. A lot of people that I've met travelling in Nepal haven't done either Chitwan nor Lumbini.
Oh, right.
Because it's a little bit out of the way. It's not on the hiking circuit. It ain't Kathmandu or Pokhara, the two main places people visit. I would consider them kind of two extracurricular travel places for people who have a bit more time in Nepal.
Okay, fair enough. And they offer different things, I assume.
Very different things. In fact, they couldn't really be more different. It's just that they happen to be equidistant from each other on the way from Pokhara to Kathmandu or from Kathmandu to Pokhara. So people sort of hit them up as part of a journey.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. Tell us what you liked.
Yeah, well, Chitwan, I'd heard good things about it. People had told me, you should go to Chitwan. You like animals. There's lots of animals in Chitwan. It can very much be regarded as the sort of animal zone of the proverbial crystal maze of Nepal. It's like very much the place that people go to see animals. And I decided I'll go to Chitwan, not through a tour company, but on a local sort of bus. So I was lucky that I had no plans or any idea. Yeah, exactly. I boarded the Chitwan-mobile and went to Chitwan. But it transpired, in fact, that perhaps on this occasion a tour would have been a good thing. I sat down on the bus and immediately was beckoned over to a seat by an Australian girl who was there. She went, "Oh, you can come and sit next to me if you want."
There it is, everyone's favourite Australian accent.
Yeah, so I sat next to her. We got talking. We got on like a house on fire. We talked the old damn way to Chitwan. It's like a big old long journey from Kathmandu. And then by the time I got to Chitwan, mate, I was on my own. I ended up just texting her and being like, you know that tour that you booked on? She'd paid a lump of money to have an all experiences done sojourn around Chitwan.
Oh, yeah.
I just texted her and I said, can I just come on your tour tomorrow? I'll just pay.
Oh,
like,
wow.
I want to... Yeah.
That's wicked. And then that was just because it was easier or offered more than you could have achieved on your own? Or how or did you want to see her again? Come on, give us the gossip.
No, well, I went to Chitwan thinking I'll organise the tour by myself. I'll do all this stuff. I'll find someone who wants to take me around the jungle once I get to Chitwan. Mm-hmm. But then I arrived, me and her went our separate ways. And I thought, well, I might as well. It's going to ultimately be around the same cost if I just go on the tour that she's already organised.
Right.
So
cool.
Why not just hit her up and be like, hey, what's the price? Can I just get involved with that? And then I have a pre-made friend on a tour. She's presumably done a little bit of research. Other than that, I'm just going to be sat alone in my own little homestay. So I thought better just to ask her. She said yes. And then the next morning, I just went over to her hotel and embarked on a tour with her, a guy from Belgium, a couple of girls from France. It was a right party.
Wow.
And we all embarked together on first a canoe ride through the Chitwan River where you could see crocodiles and exotic birds. It was really very beautiful.
Wow.
Then a jungle walk through the high elephant grass. There was tiger scratches and marks on trees. There was a very knowledgeable guide telling us all about it.
Oh, dear.
And then on a jeep safari through, again, the jungle, where we came face to face with a lot of musk deer and a couple of rhinoceros.
So I was doing some research last night and I watched a few YouTube videos about Chitwan so that I was prepared for this conversation because I've not been to Chitwan. And I don't know if this guy got incredibly lucky, you'll be able to tell me, but he was walking down the road in Chitwan, which is it a town? Is it big enough to be called a city?
I would describe it as a town, definitely not a city.
And there was a rhinoceros just walking down the road?
Yeah.
In the
I've
town?
seen that as well. Yeah. So there's two different types of rhino in Chitwan. Some of them stick to the jungle and they're very interesting and, definitely don't approach them. But then there's one or two that just stroll through the town. I myself, on my second evening there, was just strolling about trying to get some dinner, and there was a rhino that came into the local football field to graze on the mustard seeds that were growing nearby. So I actually saw one of those domestic rhinos. Quite a sight to behold.
I don't doubt it. How do you react? They're dangerous, I assume, surely.
You don't react. Very dangerous to react. You just try and not react as much as you possibly can.
So in the YouTube video, this guy was videoing it from behind, and there was, a group of people that had obviously been halted by the fact that it was in the road, but it was walking down in one direction, and there were tuk-tuks, there were cars, there were people on bicycles, and they were all just kind of following the rhino. I guess that's the safest thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was not many people around where my rhino was eating the mustard seed. And it was kind of odd contextually because previously I'd seen a rhino in the jungle and been really excited to see this beast. And then to see him again, a different one just in the town, it's really unusual. But what incredible creatures, pachyderms, these tough, thick skin, armoured sort of tanks. Yeah. Really incredible to see. I'll give you a video and a photo for the Instagram, at TRIPOLOGY Podcast on Instagram, so people can see said rhino for himself. But yeah, really a wonderful experience, Chitwan. Highly recommend it. You know me, I love animals, don't I?
You do. If there's one thing I know about you, it's that you love animals. So what else did you see when you were in the jungle then? And is this jungle kind of similar in terms of flora and fauna to anything that you've experienced before?
Not really. It's a bit different from the Amazon or the Belizean jungle, but it was very, very interesting of its own right. I was kind of in the wrong season, Adam. The elephant grass was very, very high. So in truth, didn't see as many animals as you might otherwise see. I really saw rhinos, musk deer, a lot of different birds. It was interesting, definitely, but not the right season to see like a tiger. You'd have to be walking for you have to do a much longer walking tour to see something like that.
Okay,
So
well, the Tripology audience are probably then, the next question is going to be, do you know when the best season is? What would a local from Chitwan say the best season to see a tiger is? Or, more
just
wildlife?
go when that elephant grass is shorter. It's always going to be a long shot to see a tiger in Chitwan. Mm-hmm. But there are many, like, you could pay to do walking tours that take ages. Yeah, you'd be good at seeing a tiger. Clouded leopard seeing son of a gun. But
I'll be there for 5 minutes. Is that a tiger?
Yeah.
Next to that rhino.
You get lost on a walking tour. Yeah, so if you're invested in seeing something like that, then go for a long time, do your walking tour excursions, and go when the elephant grass is at its shortest. But for me, it was just passing through and really interesting to see. I will say one thing I didn't like about Chitwan is a big part of the culture is elephant rides. We've talked about that on our Patreon podcast a little bit, but elephant riding and that sort of thing, obviously very ethically, provides a bit of a conundrum. Didn't like it, didn't have to participate in it, but that was there. You could see tourists riding elephants around Chitwan.
Oh, I wondered whether it also might be a mode of transport. People don't just use them to get around, do they? Or is it quite obviously?
It's mainly a touristy thing, mate.
Yeah, that's a shame. And this is going to sound really strange, but I'm just going to say exactly what I just thought, is that when people go to Thailand, okay, I would say that Thailand is probably, if you put a gun to my head and said pick one country that backpackers will go to first, or that is kind of seen in the backpacker space as this like backpacker hub, I would probably say Thailand. Usually lots of the backpackers who go to Thailand, a lot of them that you meet, it's their first time backpacking, or they're quite young or whatever. So not that I can justify the elephant riding, but I could maybe see why it happens more than I would like it to. However, in Nepal, I would say maybe you see a different demographic of backpacker. And I don't know if that's true, but maybe slightly older, maybe been other places beforehand, maybe will also be sort of thinking about the ethics behind riding elephants. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's really true. Good point. I think that the calibre of backpacker in Nepal is higher than the calibre of backpacker that you might find readily in Thailand. But there's always going to be people who just fly in and they're tourists with money. I don't think it's the backpackers that are riding these elephants. I think it's the industry exists because of other travellers, vacationers. And I think it will always exist because of vacationers who justify elephant riding and things by being like, yeah, but I love elephants and I've always wanted to ride one. I think it's just a sad truth of the nature. And obviously one thing we can do as podcasters is just spread a bit of knowledge. There ain't ever no reason to ride an elephant. And I think that should be as standard. We should put that on our bio on our Spotify, shouldn't we?
Yeah. In the same breath though, if you had the chance to ride a rhino, I mean, pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a no riding pachyderm policy, but there we go. It's interesting, innit, mate, because Chitwan, really, I'd love to be able to describe in detail the beautiful animals I've seen. I've been to the Masai Mara on safari and I was absolutely spellbound and blown away by it. But I don't want it the fact that I didn't see a huge quantity of animals shouldn't take away from the majesty that I experienced whilst there. It was amazing to be with those people in that canoe, slowly floating down the river, looking at crocs, seeing the power behind the muscles of that rhinoceros. It was really a great experience, not distracted by the sparsity of the animals we saw. And my whole experience of Chitwan was hung on the fact that on that bus ride, that Australian asked me to come and sit next to her. That relationship, that friendship became very important to me. Just for the time I was in Chitwan, we ended up going for big long walks in the evening, talking. It was a cool little travel friendship. And yeah, it just goes to show she was open enough to say, hey, come sit next to me on that bus. And I was open enough to say yes. And we just became friends. And the fact that we could explore Chitwan together as a result of that was a really cool thing.
Yeah, totally. I wish I was with you there, mate. It's kind of reliving it through you telling the story, me trying to piece it together. Chitwan seems like this sort of hub, and yeah, of course the wildlife as well. It goes without saying. I'd love to be around that kind of thing.
I really loved it. It was a cool experience, a cool time. Nice to go back to the jungle with a positive mindset and just live my life the way I'm doing now. It felt like a very peaceful little moment to take a breath. And taking a breath is what I want to do now, Adam, because I've got a hell of a story to tell you after the meditation break. I always feel good after a little bit of meditation, and I tell you what, meditation is on my mind at the moment. Do you want to know why?
I do want to know why.
Right now, I'm talking to you, and fans of the podcast can go to youtube.com/@tripologypodcast. They can look at me now. I'm in an entirely white room. It's almost bizarre, isn't it, to look at?
Yeah, I've noticed you're wearing a Tripology t-shirt as well. It could use an iron, but we won't hold that against you.
I'm a backpacker, mate. All this stuff is just rolled up and thrust in a backpack. I've taken it out. I'm wearing a white Tripology shirt against a white background, and I'm in Lumbini. Have you ever heard of Lumbini?
So I have heard of Lumbini, but only because of a meal that we went for in a local restaurant. I don't know if you remember this, but
Me and you,
a couple of weeks before you left, we went for an Indian meal. Well, I mean, the family who own it are actually from Nepal. And there was a picture on the wall, and you were having a chat with the owner, talking about the fact you're going to Nepal. Yeah. And he said, oh, you should go to Lumbini, which is where I'm from, the birthplace of, I'm not going to take the story away from you, but that's the only reason why. And you said, oh, I'm probably going to go there.
Absolutely, yeah. The birthplace of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, the original OG Buddha. Mate, because of that guy that you're talking about, had in my head, I definitely want to go to Lumbini when I'm in Nepal. I definitely want to go to Lumbini when I'm in Nepal. I definitely want to go there. But upon arriving in Kathmandu, I asked people, have you been to Lumbini when you've been in Nepal? And the overwhelming response was, either, no, I ain't gone Lumbini, or I've been to Lumbini and I did not like it.
Oh, I'm in shock.
Don't go to Lumbini, I even got. Similar to that man who told you not to go to Don Det in the Thousand Islands in Laos.
Refreshing.
Many people told me, don't go to Lumbini, I don't like it, you'll be disappointed. Do go to Lumbini, but set your expectations and your bar very, very low.
My goodness. Well, what are these people expecting to see when they get to Lumbini?
I think people hear that it's the birthplace of Siddhartha Gautama and expect something.
Right.
And they go there. And I'll tell you a little bit what they're served up with, because I came all the way to Lumbini. It's a long old bus ride for me. I actually didn't go via Chitwan. I went straight from Kathmandu. It was an overnight bus. Very, very long bus ride. There's no backpacking culture here. There's no hostels or anything like that. So it's private rooms only, which is convenient for making a podcast, but slightly less convenient budgetarily. And the main sort of section of Lumbini is this huge complex,
right,
in which there's the main temple housing the marker stone where the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, the place that he was actually born. Historians have identified the exact spot where he was born. There's a temple built around it.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Great, cool.
Then, every country that has an interest in Buddhism has erected their own monastery and their own temple in a complex that's a few kilometres long and a kilometre wide. It's a large complex that you need a tuk-tuk or a motorbike to journey around it. And there's a Cambodian monastery, a Thai monastery, an Indian monastery, a garden erected by the people of Germany. There's all these different things. It has the feel of a sort of theme park of Buddhism.
Right, okay. And is also quite gimmicky and commercial, or?
I think that's what the travellers who were warning me against Lumbini felt. And I think that they felt like it was just this madcap, twisted tour of Buddhism. Hey, right, oh, look at our temple, it's all big and golden, and here's a picture of the Buddha, but 50 metres there's another one and another one and another one until you're all Buddhist out and it's all gone crazy. That is valid to an extent, you know? Like, I paid for a tuk-tuk to drive me all about these places, and he was a bit pushy. He was like, you got 5 minutes, quick, go to the Cambodian monastery, meet me back out here. We've got 2 hours to go around the whole thing. I understand what they're saying, all these people.
Yeah, you were on a time frame, were you?
Yeah, I was on a time frame, like, because, you know, you pay the tuk-tuk driver for 2 hours to take you around. I get it. I get what these people experience. However, my experience of Lumbini has been entirely positive. I've loved my time here very, very dearly. I think maybe it boils down to a couple of things. My expectations were low because people set them very low.
Right, yeah. I wonder if that's helped you, if you've had an overall positive experience because you went in there thinking that it wasn't going to be great.
That's potentially true. I also have a vested interest in Buddhism. I've never identified as a Buddhist, but it's been a sizable part of my life in some sense. I did that silent meditation retreat. I went to a temple while I was at university a few times. I meditate, you know, not frequently, but whenever I remember.
But even if you're not sort of actively a practicing Buddhist, I would say that your ethics and principles that you live your life by are certainly, if there's any religion, it would be Buddhism.
Yeah, I totally agree with that in a lot of ways, yeah. And the iconography and the art and the feel of Buddhism is something that's permeated my life. And, you know, I've read the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and I've, like, read the life and times of Buddha and this sort of thing. So I'm interested in it. For me, all the other monasteries were just nice to see. It was nice to see those other monasteries. But going to the Maya Devi monastery there, the temple, which had that marker stone, was such a profound experience because I was able to imagine, like, Buddha, his life is so well documented as a historical figure, not just as a religious one. So we know that that's where that actual person was born in, like, 600 BC. Right? So we're talking about thousands of years ago. This person was born in this place. And that just felt very real to me and really cool. Yeah. And then I wonder how much of it is travel experience and context, Adam, because I went there during the day and there was school trips. There was people asking to take pictures with me because there's no tourism there apart from domestic tourism, so it's all Nepali and Indian people there. They're asking to take pictures with me. I had to queue to see the marker stone. I was rushed, you know, but still I had this profound experience. Then by happenstance I went for a walk in the evening out of my little hotel, noticed that Maya Devi temple was still open, went back there at like 7 p.m. at night, and there was absolutely no one but me and the monks. I was able to walk through those grounds, go back to the marker stone, take a good 10 minutes looking at it, feeling whatever spirituality I felt there. I went and sat by a Bodhi tree with a monk there chanting. It was a completely different experience from going in the day. And it made me think, like, travel is all about context, all about how you're prepared to experience these things and the time that you get to do that. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, incredible. And again, kind of similar to what I was saying in, you know, the last episode where we mentioned Kyoto and about experiencing different temples at different times of day, and that everyone kind of has a negative view of Kyoto because it's so busy. But if you go at 10 o'clock in the morning with the other 5,000 people who want to see the temple, that's what your experience is going to be.
Yes.
But if you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you see the sunrise and you're on your own, that's what your experience of that temple is going to be. So you will remember that fondly. I think it's really important that you can not choose your own adventure. I mean, that's a cliche, but yeah, having the correct frame of mind and just experiencing it for what it is in that moment that you're there is, really important takeaway. I'm very glad you had an amazing time.
It's happenstance to a certain extent because I didn't go out of my hotel that evening with the intention of going back. Now there won't be many people. I just sort of stumbled across the experience, which is nice. I also just think prior knowledge and understanding is such an important thing. Do you know much about the story of Siddhartha Gautama, of the Buddha?
Almost nothing. I'd struggle to know less.
Well, maybe it's cool if I do a really abridged version, and I'm not going to pay much dividends to historical accuracy here, and I'm sure there's people that want to correct me and all that stuff, but my understanding is essentially there was a ruler, Suddhana, who was kind of the ruler of a region, and he had a child. Right. And he was told by astrologers and monks that the child would either be a great ruler or a great spiritual leader, and that would depend on whether he experienced suffering, whether he was exposed to the suffering of the world. And his father desperately wanted him to be a great ruler, a great leader like him. And so he kept him within this sort of walled city, and he kept him from suffering, kept him in a life of luxury, basically.
Right.
And at the age of 29, my exact age now,
wow.
Buddha did this thing called the Great Renunciation, where he left the city walls and went and studied with these ascetic Hindus for 6 years. And it was after that he achieved his enlightenment. I tell you this because today I was lucky enough to do something which I think no one else I've spoken to in Lumbini did, but I took a local bus out of Lumbini for a good 30 kilometres, and I arrived at the historical archaeological site of that palace. And I was able, as a 29-year-old, to explore the grounds of that central walled city and exit out through the very same historical gate that Siddhartha Gautama left at the age of 29. I walked out of that same gate at the same age. It was such a cool experience, man. And I don't think many people even know that that spot exists. Yeah, the name of this old city with the palace is Kapilavastu. And it's only 30 kilometres out of Lumbini. And it was amazing just to know that he was 29, this historical figure when he left. And me being 29 now, I was able to completely contextualise exactly how long it was that he spent confined within those palace walls. It was exactly the length of my lifetime so far. So it's just such a cool, visceral thing. I loved it, man. It was so good.
And the fact that sparked kindness and, was ultimately the birth of Buddhism is, quite something. I mean, it's impossible for me to sort of comprehend the sort of magnitude that we're talking about here, but it's lovely that you had that mindset going into it. Is it something that you would encourage more people to do, is to go to the archaeological site? What else is there apart from the palace? Because it obviously held more meaning to you as an individual than it would do to, say, me. I mean, I'm not 29.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's a museum and stuff like that, and the archaeological site itself is quite bare. It isn't a tourist attraction at all. I can't stress this enough. Right. There was maybe 10, 15 other people on the site, and all of them were Nepali people. There was no tourists whatsoever. And
all of them were tuk-tuk drivers waiting for your business.
Yeah, exactly. But even one came up to me and said, like, we just don't get tourists here. People don't care about this place. And he put me on his bike and showed me around a little bit, not asking for money or anything, He just wanted to tell me about the place.
Yeah,
because
cool.
I just don't think they get many people there. Not many people understand it. And I think what an amazing antidote and antithesis to that theme park of Buddhism that people felt like they were experiencing in Lumbini proper, because it just was the absolute opposite of that.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe now you've put it on the map. We're broadcasting this over the airwaves. And all of a sudden there's going to be an influx. There's going to be infrastructure there. You're going to get back there and there's going to be sort of commercial kiosks selling little trinkets and things.
I can't believe
there's going to be a rhino walking past.
Yeah, I can't believe that it's not on the map, right? Because everyone goes to Lumbini. It's the birthplace of Siddhartha Gautama. But right down the road is the place where he lived for the first 29 years of his life. And people just don't care about that. It's bizarre. I've really loved Lumbini, man. I've really loved coming here. I'm so glad that I didn't miss it because of what people said.
Wow. Yeah. Have you also noticed far less tourists or backpackers in Lumbini than there were in Chitwan, for example?
Oh, yeah, it's completely different. It's completely
Wow.
not in the same realm. I've maybe seen a couple of other tourists eating a dal bat and on the street that my hotel's also on, but
Which,
there's
as we learned on the last episode, is made from...
Say again.
Which, as we learned on the last episode, is made from...
What did we learn? Oh, dal
it's made
bat.
from
Lentils. Yeah, exactly. Adam's food item. Have you thought of a name for that yet?
I was thinking over the last couple of days, I want it to be... I don't want to give it too much thought, but I do want to come up with something that's, got legs. So we can kind of make it, it's going to be a good feature, and we can do some social media promotion around
Frog's
it.
legs. France.
Oh, I don't want it to become its own thing, but I do care about food a lot and eating a lot, and it is one of the reasons why I travel. So,
So
very rarely will you. I was going to say very rarely would I travel somewhere to a country or a region where I'm not interested in the food.
Yeah, and honestly, Nepali food's been so amazing. I've loved it really a lot. So I really think come to Nepal, people. But if you do come to Nepal, make sure Lumbini and Kapasivalu... It's so difficult to know. Make sure Lumbini and Kapilavastu... Make sure Lumbini and Kapilavastu are on the list. Honestly, if you have any interest at all in Buddhism and in spirituality, then I really highly recommend it, despite the theme park of Buddhism aspect that people seem to have taken aversion to. I think, man, it's been one of my favourite things about Nepal so far, is actually just seeing these places. But I do think it requires some imagination. It requires to kind of put yourself in the footsteps of the Buddha and sort of think about who that person was and who they might have been. I enjoy that stuff. I think it's maybe just the kind of traveller I am.
Yeah, I love that about you, and I'll try and employ that going forward. I also think that I'm guilty sometimes of wanting things to be something they're not. And yes, of course, this theme park complex of all these different monasteries maybe feels a little bit touristy, a bit contrived, a bit forced. But just take it for what it is. Think about where you are in the grand scheme of things and what it means and its historical significance and how important those monasteries are to the people who practice Buddhism. I think that's a really important takeaway, mate.
Yeah, and how proud they must be of their monasteries in that specific location. I think sometimes you've got to, if you feel like you've got the ick because you're in a bit of a touristy environment, just think about why it's touristy and try and separate yourself from that a little bit. Like, sure, I had to wait for 5 minutes taking photos with a bunch of school kids from someplace in Nepal that wanted to have a photo with the one Western guy who was at the World Peace Pagoda in Lumbini, but that's just part and parcel of the thing. Didn't let it destroy my adventure there. It was really, I had an amazing time in both Chitwan and Lumbini, and yeah, proud to be able to say that I came here and enjoyed it. Mate, next week, I'm going to tell you all about my journey in the Himalayas.
Wowzers. I'm strapping myself in for that one. I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm jealous, I'll be honest.
Hell of an adventure. It's a hell of an adventure. It's going to be a grueling tale of snow, of hiking, of walking. I'm loving my time in Nepal. I've never been happier, and I'm so glad that I get to speak to you, Adam. For now, I think we've all learned a lot. We've seen some rhinos, we've meditated under a Bodhi tree. Let's sit under the proverbial Bodhi tree of this podcast, close our eyes, and just allow ourselves to drift off into a bright and wonderful tomorrow. Will you come with me?
I will. I want to say again, Alan, happy birthday, mate. We're 1 year old. Here's to us.
Yeah, what an achievement. Write to us if you've been listening from day one. It's tripologypodcast@gmail.com. We're so glad to have you on board, and let that be the last thing I say as we close our eyes and drift off to the nirvana of next week. We'll see you there.
Bye.
Bye.